Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look now and take some time for hemp. I know cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yeah, it's time for hemp. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 barrels of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rest. Well, right now it's time for hemp.
Thank you for taking Time for Hemp. I'm your host, Casper Leach. You are listening to Time for Hemp on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and, of course, iHeartRadio. We are the only all-cannabis broadcasting network on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's bringing you this much original content about the need to end prohibition. Today is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays we like to put a big shout-out to all the hard-working people up at LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. They are an amazing group of people who are diligently working to end prohibition, the failed policies of such all around the world. Don't forget, anytime you hear the word joint on the Big Joint broadcast, nearly 2.5 million people all around the world hit their pipes, their bongs, their vaporizers, and take Time for Hemp. And I want to welcome today my joint host here on the big broadcast, second week on board, Judge Lenny Frieling. And Your Honor, I understand we've got Chris Chiari. Sounds like I'm ordering a soft drink. I'll take 2 Chris Chiaris, please, and 1 spritzer.
I'll take the same.
All righty. Welcome aboard, gentlemen. Happy Leap Day.
I love hanging out in this joint.
Well, Your Honor, I'll let you introduce our guest.
It's my pleasure to introduce our listeners to my friend, Chris Chiari. And the reason that I have asked Chris to be on is because he paid me a large sum of... No, I'm kidding. Chris, why don't you tell us why I have asked you on?
Casper, Lenny, thanks a lot for having me on. Lenny and I have known each other for a little over a year now, and it's been right from the start. Someone with Lenny's years of experience involved specifically in this conversation about reforming cannabis laws, reforming drug laws. And when we met, he became a friend, advisor, and someone that I've learned to trust and certainly enjoy interacting with. The reason Lenny invited me on was I'm running for office here in the city of Denver, Colorado, a city that has become synonymous with this certainly Colorado experiment in cannabis reform, but it's a city that's recognized the world over now as a place where progressive conversations about drug policy reform are happening. And I am running to serve on a city council that's been directly involved in crafting the types of regulations that you are seeing involved in the creation of hundreds of recreational shops and hundreds more medical shops that have been readily available to the citizens of the state for the last several years.
Chris, what city are you running in?
Denver, Colorado. It's District 10 in Denver. The city's broken up into 11 districts, and I'm running in the center of the city, around Capitol Hill, downtown, and into the neighborhoods of Chiari Creek, Cheeseman Park, and Congress Park.
For those not familiar with Colorado and with Denver in particular, is it fair to say that that is a very significant location, district?
It's right in the middle of the city, and it's a district that spans high-rises all the way to the single-family homes, like I said, in Chiari Creek and across the district around the many parks that are part of the character and appeal of a city like Denver to young people and retirees who are just flocking here to be part of this very unique opportunity. I've been involved in politics for several years, and it's rare that an issue comes along that when you get to finally be honest and open about it, it feeds transparency and so many other things. And that's happening here in Denver. When you're comfortable coming out of the closet as a cannabis consumer, and you don't have to look over your shoulder anymore, it influences the number of people and the types of people who start showing up and participating in the community at large. If you think about it, at the end of the day, if you go home and you got high, it was the kind of thing that you usually were forced to hide. It was stigmatized. You didn't want to go out. You didn't want to drive. You didn't want to go somewhere, be called out for being stoned. That's beyond us.
Did you really understand the word marginalized before? I know personally it never really hit home until after legalization, when I said to myself, damn, now I get it. That's what happened to all of us until legalization.
As someone who came to Colorado after the state had already started down the road evolving its drug policy specifically towards cannabis, no, marginalization, you start to realize that very quickly everywhere else. The entire economy that the large majority of Americans still interact with to find and possess and consume cannabis puts so many people at risk under the current framework. I can't even imagine now living in so many other parts of the country, looking at what's happening in Colorado and realizing that we're all allowed to walk around with an ounce of cannabis in our pocket without any legal issue or repercussions simply because we're an adult over 21. And that's such a stark contrast to places like Louisiana and down in the South, where having an ounce of cannabis on you would potentially lead someone to a lifetime of being tarnished by the legal repercussions of being caught with that much.
Have you ever had the experience of having a law enforcement person knock at your door for any innocuous reason, with the first thing going through your mind being, oh man, I hope I didn't leave a roach out?
I haven't. I personally haven't. But I know too many people who have, and who had that roach out and maybe had a little more and then went on to have to deal with the legal repercussions of law enforcement's overbearing concentration on something that is truly victimless. It's the personal individual choice. And, Lenny, we both know responsible participants and responsible consumers of cannabis are everyday people.
I've been frequently quoted as saying, although smoking marijuana does not make you stupid, some stupid people do smoke marijuana. And Larry, I think it's fair to say you and I have both seen some very smart, successful people who also smoke cannabis. Is that what you're seeing in District 10?
When it comes specific to that conversation, with the number of rec stores scattered across so many of the neighborhoods here in Colorado, you look at the line of people going in to buy. It is the cross section of all of us.
In Colorado, we know what a rec store is, but could you spell it?
Recreational retail storefront that sells high-end and for-profit cannabis.
And who can go into those stores?
For a recreational store, any adult over the age of 21 with a legal ID issued anywhere in the world that proves that it's them and that their birth date would make them old enough to be there.
So plugging for Colorado, tourists can walk into one of these stores and legally buy pot.
Yes. But let's not think the conversation ends there. Now, this is the magic, right? Drug policy reform, where we have legal cannabis here in Colorado, but now all the other issues that come up, whether you can public consumption. So where can you consume? That is still a conversation that has not been resolved and is still actively going on here in the state of Colorado. You can go into the liquor store, buy alcohol, take it home, you can drink it, but you can also go to a bar We don't have clubs. There are some experiments around private clubs that people have started to, take risks with. Some of them have been successful in some of the different cities here throughout the state. But what I'm getting at is, just because we legalize the right for a 21-plus-year-old adult to possess and purchase up to a quarter at a time, but possess up to an ounce of marijuana at one time, doesn't mean that we've got it all figured out. We still have a conversation on the regulatory side that is evolving, and it will for years to come.
And for clarity for our residents, for our tourists, does this have an impact on the legality of taking anything out of the state?
It is not legal to take cannabis legally purchased and legally in your possession here in the state of Colorado out of the state of Colorado.
Okay. Jumping back to politics for a second, although we've never left politics, this is an odd time of year to be running for office. For those that are in District 10, your name will be on the ballot specifically in District 10, correct?
That's correct.
Correct. When is our election date?
The election date will be May 5th. Ballots need to be returned by, but here in Colorado, we have an all vote by mail election. So starting the middle of April, ballots will be mailed to every registered voter who lives in the city of Denver. We have a mayoral race, a number of districts that are up. But, think of this. This is the spring municipal cycle. So I would encourage anyone who's a consumer or a participant or just someone interested in the conversation of cannabis and hemp, take a look at what's going on locally. Look up your local election division in the closest city or county you live in, and you might be surprised to find out that you have an election coming up too. The spring is usually when municipal races happen in a number of places, in a larger number of places than in November for these types of elections. And what's interesting is these are the elections that fewer people participate in. So if those of us that are cannabis advocates and activists pay attention to these cycles, we can have and start having a deeper impact in how we evolve and change this conversation. If you're in a place where it's not still legal, it's legal to start the conversation. It's legal to ask if the large prison populations that we see in states like Louisiana makes sense. For the people who've put those programs together in government, it's a matter of economics now. They have thriving for-profit business, but does it still work for what people's motivations are? I bring up Louisiana because they actually have a really big election coming up this November. They have a governor's race. They have every parish or their counties is having a sheriff's race. And imagine if we were able to influence the outcome of local sheriff's races by introducing very honest and open conversations about criminal justice reform and sentencing reform and decriminalization of possession and consumption. And think of the impact that would have.
And you're mentioning that not only because of the content of what you said, you are involved in Louisiana.
I am. I've been working with Brian Welsh, who's an old friend from years ago, and Kevin Caldwell, who's a young man who's working through his involvement in his local neighborhood and through his relationships with city council. And together, the three of us have been putting together messaging and have started a petition drive in the parish of New Orleans. Goal is 10,000 total signatures. We're coming up on 2,000. We're in about a month and a half in since we launched. This is going to allow us to put a decriminalization, legalization, economic development around cannabis in certain neighborhoods plan to the people for a vote. It will be non-binding, but it becomes a change to the city charter, which our goal, even if we don't see tax and regulate blossom the very next day because of overlying state law, we would see the potential of decriminalizing possession and criminalizing some of the ancillary effects involved in having cannabis. And that would be a big win.
Chris, as somebody who has been involved in politics, who's currently running for office, is it fair to say that people who want to be elected pay attention to voting whether or not it's a binding result? If if you're running for office in Louisiana and there's a strong pro-pot vote leading to non-binding city charter items, is it fair to say that politicians that are going to look to that vote again would notice that, pay attention to that?
Absolutely. It's a conversation I had with someone here in Colorado. There are a number of candidates running here in Denver who are very open about their involvement around a cannabis conversation. There is an opportunity for this group of individuals, both successful business owners as well as advocates and the consumers themselves, to come together, whether it's small donors, whether it's volunteering and knocking on doors, or more importantly, if it's just us voting. As cannabis consumers, we overrepresent in the population of people who underperform and participate in spring elections. So if we as a group were moving message and issues with intention and action, I think we could awaken a sizable chunk of voters motivated by these questions. And I think the outcome of that in spring elections could be significant, not just here in Colorado, not here in Denver, but in a lot of places.
One of the things that I heard a number of times from people that voted for Amendment 64, that was our recent recreational legality added to our state constitution, what was more significant to them than even the legalization, these are non-smokers, was for the first time, perhaps since we ended the Vietnam War, that they felt empowered, that they felt that their vote mattered once again. Is that something you're seeing also?
You know, whether that becomes a motivator in a spring election, it normally doesn't. Amendment 64 was a very unique opportunity to dramatically change a state's involvement with a conversation like this. And it's still only beginning. Like I said before, it's still evolving. But unless it was something specific to a cannabis issue on the ballot, I'm not sure we would see a repeat of that same kind of passion and turnout unless we start organizing ourselves and each other and start paying attention to these smaller turnout elections that are the most significant. I mean, if you think about it, the city of Denver, in the state of Colorado, where we're still experimenting and evolving the regulations around recreational and even medical cannabis, with both its production and possession, the city of Denver sits at the front line of that conversation. It's a major metropolis of 650,000 people. It has a large daily workday population that then migrates back out into the surrounding suburbs. It's home to almost 80% of the dispensaries that we have here in the state, both medical and recreational. So it plays a lead role.
It's the largest city in the state, correct?
Yes.
And as we all know, for better, and I'm not going to say for worse, I'm going to say for better or for better, Colorado, which means Denver in large part, is leading the world. We have the world watching us. So you're running for city council in a state that has the strongest home rule cities in the country. Home rule, can you give us just a sense of what home rule means?
It's very specific to the
Well,
looks like we're taking a break here.
Yeah, I need to jump in here because I've got a home rule. My home rule is I pay my bills, so I've got a home to rule. And with that said, we're going to come back and take a whole lot more time for him.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. The only broadcasting network dedicated to ending the global war on drugs on iHeartRadio.
premier physician's clinic in the United States. THCF has offices all across the United States from Hawaii to Michigan. THCF Medical Clinics has helped approximately 150,000 patients obtain their medical marijuana permits to legally possess, grow, and use medical marijuana. If you have chronic pain, multiple sclerosis, or any other neurological degenerative disease, or if you have any gastrointestinal disorders such as GERD, irritable bowel syndrome, or if you have AIDS, cancer, spastic disorders, seizure disorders, or glaucoma, call us at 1-800-723-0188 or visit us online at hemp.org. Again, the number is 1-800-723-0188 and the site is hemp.org.
March, yeah, yeah. Green camouflage, we'll be unarmed. Hey. Some just fighting in big cities, taking out the innocent and the guilty. They no longer need to blend into the trees. They're hiding in the street. Oh my God, trying to desensitize me on the TV with their vision of brutality. Well, trying to shallow my conscience with defensive statements. Oh, no, camouflage, they say no, camouflage, they say no, no camouflage, no camouflage, they say no camouflage, no camouflage, no camouflage. Give me the green camouflage for my peace march. We'll be unarmed. How you mean illegal? Give me the green camouflage for my peace march. We're a peaceful people. Green camouflage, we'll be unarmed. Hey. Camouflage in a fashion, they must have thought the war was over for America. Oh, I tell them they don't need the green no more. Searching for the enemy door to door. I will make camouflage in Jamaica. Make me feel like a soldier in your army. In Barbados, most peaceful people I know still can open embargo. No camouflage, they say no camouflage, they say no camouflage. No camouflage, no camouflage, they say no camouflage. No camouflage, wow. Give me the green camouflage for my peace march. Oh yeah, green camouflage, we'll be unarmed. How can a shirt be illegal? Give me the green camouflage for my peace march. How come green camouflage so illegal? Oh, give me the green camo, camo, camo. Give me the green camouflage. Give me the green camo, camo, camo. Give me the green camouflage. No pants, no shirt, no dress, no skirt, no shoe, no sock, no bag, no rag. Give me the green camo, camo, camo. Give me the green. Hey, give me the green. How come? Give me the green. You don't fight your battle on the battle. Give me the green. Soldier. Give me the green. Hey, give me the green. Camo, camo, camo. Give me the green. No camo, no camo, no camo. No camo, hey, give me the green. Soldier. Give me the green. Oh well. Give me the green. Camo, camo, camo. Give me the green. How come?
You are listening to Time for Hemp all around the world on Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes, and of course, iHeartRadio. We've also got a app that you can download into your Android phones. We're working on a app for the Apple phones. When we made our submission, Apple said it was too much involved with the cannabis community, and they didn't have that allowed on their iTunes store. Then I went to their iTunes store, and I found more marijuana references there than I did in Willie Nelson's diary. So I do not know what their problem is. But with that said, I will pass the conversation back to my joint host and our joint guest here on the Big Joint Broadcast.
I'm afraid your joint host after the show is going to probably go to pot. Oh, well, what can you do? Chris Chiari, my friend, running for District 10, Denver City Council. Keep in mind that may be the single most important district in the most important city on the planet in our present efforts to legalize, to decriminalize, to move this forward. Chris, as you know, United States Constitution provides that if one state sues another state, that lawsuit starts and ends directly in the United States Supreme Court. Would you fill us in on why I am mentioning that?
Oklahoma and Nebraska have filed lawsuit against the state of Colorado to roll back our state constitution and the protection of what is Amendment 64 and legal and recreational cannabis, and Amendment 20 with legal and medical access cannabis and caregivers. So they want to roll this back because what's happening is so much cannabis is leaving the state. And it goes back to your question before. Can you leave Colorado with cannabis you purchase here? And the answer is no. But people are. And Nebraska on I-70, western I-70 in the state of Nebraska, there have been so many people pulled over and arrested for possession of cannabis that they have clogged their local county court system. And they're no longer able to keep up with the cost of both the prosecution of and in some cases the housing of prisoners associated with this increase in cannabis arrests along their border. And so their answer to this is go ahead and sue the state of Colorado. But it's really showing a rift. You know, Democrats and Republicans and independents alike, there are cannabis consumers in every uniform for work, whether it's a skilled labor, whether it's an executive, whether it's someone working in any of the service industries. People consume cannabis.
So it's not all Democrats that are smoking.
It's not. In Oklahoma, it's a group of Republican state lawmakers that are basically crying out and screaming foul that, you know, as far as they're concerned, this becomes a states' rights issue. From a libertarian standpoint, it becomes a victimless crime and something that government shouldn't be poking into. And so from those two sides, you do have Republican leaders in one of the states that's suing Colorado that don't agree because they understand and recognize that the people of Colorado have the right. We have the responsibility to stop what we call diversion here. There has been a thriving national cannabis market for generations. Colorado, the way that we've moved forward in reform and decriminalization and regulation, we now have to be very conscious and aware and proactive in discouraging and doing our best to stop the diversion of Colorado-produced product.
It does fly in the face of the idea that our now 50 states are part of the great experiment. And if our states can't experiment without interfering with other states, I see it as defeating the principle of our republic.
You know, I can't not agree with that. I'm as a consumer and someone here in Colorado living under the protections of our state constitution that allows me to both possess, consume, and even cultivate a small amount here in my home. And these are 3 things that I exercise.
As we chat, I'm reflecting on the irony. On the one hand, we have parents with very young children who, before moving to Colorado, were having hundreds of seizures a day, a month. Their parents have relocated to Colorado to get special blends such as Charlotte's Web, which are very low in the mind-altering THC cannabinoid, while being comparatively high in the cannabinoid CBD that the parents are finding dramatically helpful. So what we have is people moving here for medicine and other states trying to take their medicine away.
Ask any parent who is caring for a child and using cannabis in that therapy. It's the people that are moving here and they're moving here to provide care. The question is it medicine? You don't have to ask them. They're not going to tell you it's anecdotally medicine. They know it is medicine. And there are still a lot of applications yet discovered. But yeah, those are the most heart-wrenching stories. You see the families and the parents in other states across the country who don't have access, parents that put themselves at risk if they try to gain access to provide treatment for their children. It's a side of this conversation that is certainly accelerating the nationalizing of the conversation, because there are parents who would benefit and there are families and children who would benefit from cannabis as medicine in all 50 states.
We're also seeing that with cancer patients.
And not even just treating nausea. It's using cannabis therapies and cannabis oil therapies, either ingested or in some cases topically with skin cancer and melanoma, and finding cure. I really can't wait until we nationalize the conversation for one reason, so that doctors coast to coast can finally, without any fear of retribution, get involved in researching, applying, documenting, using the scientific method to track, to ask new questions, and to start identifying all of the now known cures and beyond. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Can you imagine an MD being told, you can treat your patients, but we're taking penicillin off your shelf? We don't like it. Unimaginable. But that's what we do with cannabis. Let's jump to New York State. Can you speak to the recent changes in New York State and what that means?
New York is going through a huge crisis as it's dealing with the repercussions of some of the there have been deaths that have occurred in the city, and you now have conflict between law enforcement and the community. But law enforcement is still out doing its job. It's still out protecting people from violent crime. It's still out investigating crime. They're detectives, and they're still showing up to their job and keeping each other safe and keeping the communities they work in safe. But what law enforcement in New York has slowed down on doing is some of the will of the politician. There's a great discussion going on in this country about how these victimless crimes, especially things like drug possession, create tension and conflict between law enforcement and communities. And that goes beyond what most of these men and women signed up for when they went on to the job.
Well, that's funny because I'm just recently looked over a handful of articles regarding the police there in New York, and yes, that they have been told that in order to protect their vacation time, they have to start getting out there and arresting these people for victimless crimes. Their bosses are now threatening them to take away their sick time or their vacation time if the cops don't start amping up the ticket writing, baby.
Yeah, I think that conversation needs to be rethought, because I would rather law enforcement be out doing the job of protecting and solving crime when it occurs. And look, should people be smoking in the middle of the street anywhere? No, we don't even think that's the case here in Colorado. There needs to be responsible participation and consumption. We've gone to the point that we do allow people who own property and live in apartments to smoke on their patios and to smoke on their front porch or in their backyard. So we've gotten that far in the conversation, but we still don't have clubs. But look at that. That's what we're talking about in Colorado. We don't have smoking clubs yet, right? But so many other places, they're still talking about, wait a second, if I get caught with how much? A quarter of pot broken up in 2 baggies? I could be looking at several years for possession with an intent to distribute. There's animosities. They're evolving and dissolving, and certainly here, but there are just too many places where it's still the crime that's stuffing the prisons. So the time for drug policy reform everywhere. It was yesterday. Everyone get out and vote this May, and find out if there's a city council or a county commission race where you live, where your participation, or getting someone who's willing to ask if small possession is still something that should tarnish your life from the time you're caught until the time you expire. And you'll probably find that a lot of them no longer agree with that. A lot of people are sympathetic or have family members that are suffering from cancer, or may know a family that has a child dealing with a condition that would benefit from cannabis.
As a terrifying example, we share a common border with Kansas. As our listeners know, 1 ounce is about 28.3 grams. With 25 grams in the state of Kansas, you are honestly looking at 4 to 6 years in prison for what is legal for a visitor or a resident in Colorado over 21 years old.
And it comes down, who's now doing something wrong? Because we're proving here in Colorado that the stigma and the propaganda and the story we were sold about cannabis and what legalization would lead to, well, it's been proven to not be true, and that the society doesn't crumble when cannabis becomes readily available.
Let me jump back to New York just very briefly. For our listeners that are not familiar with the New York problem, it is a tragic example of how we keep people of darker skin colors than Caucasian Lenny sitting here. What the police were doing is, in, say, Harlem, going up to a group of young men, for example, black young men, and putting them up against the wall and saying, empty your pockets. And they would empty their pockets. The police would then see their little baggie or their joint with personal small amounts of pot, and then ticket them, or more commonly, arrest them for open display.
Right, because in New York, the possession was a ticket, but it was the display that becomes the more serious prosecutorial crime.
Let me switch directions a little bit.
Yeah, well, me too. One thing I've got to put on display is my budget sometimes, as I try to figure out how we're going to make ends meet. And we do that by taking commercial breaks here at Time for Hemp.
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.
Serious Seeds is is your source for quality cannabis and sativa seeds. Serious Seeds are the creators of legendary strains like AK-47, Bubblegum, Chronic, Cali Mist, and White Russian. The AK-47 is probably the most awarded strain on the planet. The high THC content of AK-47 makes it the perfect medical strain for patients seeking quick pain relief. Cali Mist is an almost pure sativa. Female medical cannabis patients have reported that this strain helps relieve menstrual cramps. Serious Seeds just acquired another Dutch high-quality seed bank, Magus Genetics. From now on, Serious Seeds can offer you even more award-winning strains. The fine folks at Serious Seeds strive to breed the best cannabis genetics that they can find, so patients can rely on the effectiveness of their medicine. Go to SeriousSeeds.com to grow your medicine. That site again is SeriousSeeds.com.
Well, now, chocolate cake makes my poor stomach ache, and all those pills are too much for me to take. I don't like cocaine 'cause it makes me all uptight, but coffee and reefer makes me feel alright. Crystal meth will make you high.
Yeah, coffee and reefer does make me feel all right. First thing I do when I roll out of the rack in the morning is get myself a great big cup of Joe. Then Joe goes to work and gets dressed, and then I get out of bed and find my computer, and I get busy fighting against these prohibition laws. You, too, can make a difference in your neck of the woods. Just get out, get involved, and go to leap.cc and find yourself a speaker to bring to your neck of the woods to let people know how important it is to end prohibition. Also, a big thank you to KDK Distributors for being nice enough to give us a grant to keep us loud, proud, and strong. And with that said, I'm going back to my joint to listen to this joint conversation with my joint host and our joint guest here on the Big Joint Broadcast.
This is Lenny, and I'm just smiling. And how often does a commercial leave you smiling? How much of our lives were spent knowing we would never hear a commercial like that? Or thinking we were here in 1970, take your choice. Chris, this is a slow pitch. We've had prohibition of drugs since 1937 and our friends Hearst and Anslinger. Has it worked?
No.
Has prohibition worked? Has it prevented the availability of pot, of heroin, meth?
It's led to organized crime. It's led to crime. It's led to violence. It's led to high prices because of lack of demand. And in cases where demand is driven by addiction, locking someone in jail is not a humane way. It's not an American way. It's not an effective way to deal with addiction.
But it has worked so well.
It's generated and created an industry that is more intent on self-perpetuation than it is on reform. When prisons were run by states, you could still hold on to the notion that it was designed to reform. But when it becomes for-profit and it's simply about a body in a bed, it becomes even less. It has no dignity in the first place. It gets even less.
And as you know, part of our LEAP message is you can cure an addiction. You cannot cure a conviction.
I heard Jim Gray say that. I hosted an event here for LEAP in my home here in Denver, and Judge Gray was here, and he made that statement, and it's a very powerful statement. You can treat addiction. You can be there to treat someone's addiction if they find themselves in need multiple times in a lifetime. But he said it, one conviction, and that is with you for a lifetime.
Have you seen anyone with a heroin problem, with a meth problem, with a problem with what we would generally say are dangerous drugs, substantially addicting drugs? Have you ever seen anyone who was helped by sending them to prison or giving them a felony conviction?
No. No, and not to say that there isn't a place in the criminal justice system for felony convictions and for incarceration. There is. But the consumption of drugs, whether driven by recreation or addiction, has no place being a conversation resolved by prison.
So we're creating crime that wouldn't otherwise exist by having this a government price-controlled underground business. The government forces the prices up.
Yeah, whether over-criminalizing it and driving it to black market, which drives the prices up, or in the state now of Colorado, in a regulated market with taxation, it's still the taxes are still being blamed on some of the reason the prices are still high. But my degree's in economics. I'm kind of more of a numbers person, and I think we're watching the progressive reduction in the price of recreational cannabis. And what's interesting is the taxes are a percentage. So as the price comes down, if the price comes down by 40, 50% more, the amount taxed will come down substantially.
Well,
and the amount that will be paid.
People are also oftentimes neglecting to pay attention to the other side of the fence, the amount of money that is saved by the cities and counties from chasing after marijuana users and dragging them through the courts and throwing them into jail to pay for their clothing, food, and housing and medical care. The amount that they're saving on that is just fantastic as well.
And now we're writing the summons for public consumption because we made it legal, but we don't give anyone a place to smoke it. So if you're outside and you smoke it, and there are certain parts of the city where the police are being more engaged, people are still earning themselves summons. So it's not like it's, and that's the funny thing, once you go, what happens, Lenny, once you go over an ounce of cannabis, you start getting back into fines. What happens if you get caught with a pound of cannabis? You start talking the potential of prison again. So even in a state where it's legal and recreational, unless it is a manifested, logged, barcoded, weighed delivery of cannabis between production and retail distribution, people can still be convicted of felonies for marijuana. So we call it an experiment for a reason.
Now, in Colorado, if you have a legal amount, 1 ounce of bud is the same. It's treated the same as 1 ounce of hashish. We need to keep track of the fact that if you do it illegally, then let's say you have 5 pounds of illegal marijuana and it's a certain level of felony. Right. It's 2.5 pounds of extract or concentrate. So in the criminal end, the concentrates, you need half the quantity. If you stay, and
we still haven't even talked about that. And you're absolutely right. You can have up to 1 ounce of bud flower, or you could have up to 1 ounce of concentrate, or up to food that has a cumulative total of 1 ounce of extracted cannabis. So I had a friend who was here the other night. He was going to a concert, and he had one of the largest over-the-shoulder suitcases filled with legal possession I had ever seen. And it was a few grams of hash of this, a few grams of some shatter, which is the concentrated wax, and oils, and then different types of food and candies that he had made himself. He's a master chef, extraordinary individual. And it was all within the limits of what he was allowed to have on him. I was just blown away how big that bag was and how much was in it.
Now, you're over 21. I'm over 21. In the state of Colorado, if I don't take anything of value from you, can I give you a joint?
You may. You can give without any remuneration up to 1 ounce of cannabis from one adult to another. And so that means if a friend wants to share, and I think that's really what that's meant to cover, you can give a friend a bud and say, hey, you don't have any weed? Here you go. Sharing a bud. And you are legally allowed to do that. And that's a really great thing. Would have been kind of ridiculous if you could have it, individual could have it, but a quirk of the law would have still allowed passing the joint to a friend to be the crime. But that's why you have to be careful, and why this is a delicate conversation when you start talking about regulation in anything, there's always the unintended consequences and the unexpected consequences. And so, that's back to what we started with, running in District 10 here in the city of Denver City Council, to be a honest and engaged participant in every subject, from preservation of the symphony, which is a conversation we're having here in Colorado and Denver, the types of buildings we develop, type of city we build that's been attractive to millennials coming from across the country, and also as someone who is never again going to be afraid or ashamed to be honest when I say that I am a cannabis consumer.
Well, now, what types of problems do you anticipate the community will be facing? And as a candidate, how are you preparing yourself and the community to deal with those problems in regards to the cannabis industry? I mean, for everywhere from the federal level to outside states are trying to shut it down. What do you really anticipate you need to focus on, and how you're going to keep your guard up?
Being proactive and engaged right there from a body of 13, promoting and pushing and advocating for the types of reforms we're still looking for. Things like expanded hours so that stores are open till 10 o'clock at night, so that we can thwart the opportunity for the black market that still thrives in the early evening, because here in the city of Denver, we make marijuana stores close at 7 o'clock. All the way down to where you can consume, to make sure that if we don't want it on the street, which we don't, then we need to make sure we allow it to occur in certain places. And whether that's at 21 plus clubs, special events that are permitted, or other ideas that we haven't even thought of yet, because we're not engaged in this conversation at the moment, and we need to be. These things need to happen from on the council. The other thing is, from a national conversation, leadership in a city like Denver does have the opportunity to present on behalf of this city and on behalf of this conversation the fact that there are those of us that are participants that are both the business professionals and the consumers, industry and the people that walk up to the counter and purchase that product. We are everyone from every occupation and from every cross-section of the community. It's very new to sit here and realize that, everyone who is Lenny, how many years? You've been a professional here in Colorado for a long time, and think back to all the time you had to spend keeping it quiet that you were a cannabis consumer. Casper, just being able to say that, I think, helps us move this ball forward.
Oh, absolutely, and I understand that, and because many people may go, "Oh my God, I didn't know that," but those who have listened to my program for a long time know that I'm very open. I'm openly gay, but I'm also an old person in the gay community. I'm almost 60 this year, and I can remember back to a time to have said that could have caused you physical harm between your point of work and your point of home. So I know how important it is to stand up and to say things out loud and to be your own self and to be able to move forward in honesty in relationships and when you're dealing with those in your community, and how horrible secrets can be when they have to be kept as a secret. With that said, we are wrapping up this hour to go to the next show, but this gives us time to give a shout out to our websites and any organizations that you want to put a spotlight on. We'll start with our guest first.
I would ask people, the site that's up right now is come to Chiari for Denver on Facebook. You'll find my site, Chiari for Denver. That's CHIARI for Denver. And, follow what we're doing. And if you want to like the page, come on, you'll get a snapshot of what we're up to over the next 105 days.
And Your Honor?
I always love giving a shout out to LEAP.cc, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition.cc. Sign up. We have 300 speakers worldwide and over 150,000 supporters and growing, and we want you, all of you.
And with that said, please don't forget that we are 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, broadcasting about the need to end prohibition. If you like this broadcast, you can find our archives on the timeforhemp.com website, as well as the archives of all of our hosts. We have apps you can download into your phones. You can listen to us on your tablets. And remember, the next time you hear me, you'll know that it's time for hemp.
Look at all that money, yeah, the money that they spent. Take another look and spend some time for him. Don't cut trees for paper, cause it hurts the environment. Stop deforestation, yes, it's time for him. Whoa, an acre of hemp makes 20 bales of oil. No need for pesticides to poison all our soil. People got no food, they got no clothes, they got no rent. Well, time for help! Yeah!
On the brain, you know we like it. The healing of our pain, you know you can't deny it. Burn it up if you really, really never try it. Roll up the weed and yes, we taking another finding. Seek now the higher meditation, burning all across the nation. For some it is the medication, talking about the cancer patient. Good for any stressful situation, a negative that you facing, yeah. We're singing a song about the weed, because it is so good, it is indeed. No matter what you have been told or what you've been led to believe, so light up a fat spliff, regardless of police, and pass it over here and let me take a hit. Please roll up the split and make me light. Roll up the split and make me light. The meditation on the brain, you know we like. Roll up the split and make me light. The healing of our pain, you know you can't deny it. Roll up the split and make me light. Burn it up if you really, really never try it. Roll up the split and make me light. Roll up some weed and yes, we taking another kind. One of them who don't like this. I've been no girl in my pocket. Come make we go reason together. Talk about things that matter. Oh, roll up that split and make me light. The meditation on the brain, you know we like it. The split make me light. The healing of our pain, no you can't deny it. The split make me light. Burn it up if you really, really never try it. The split make me light. Roll up the weed, yeah. So you take these words from me, yes, and go and get some green. 'Cause we overgrow, not overthrow, you know we can achieve the hopes and dreams of a man who's known as Mark Emery. Him go to jail for life, yes, for fighting for the weed. And sometimes, you know, it's hard to take the rap for the earth. In prison cells, you know, so this is not what they deserve. Roll up that split and make me light. The meditation on the brain, you know we like it. Roll up that split and make me light. Burn it up if you really, really never try it. Roll up that split and make me light. The healing of our pain, you know you can't deny it. Roll up that split and make me light. Roll up some weed and yes, we're taking another kind, eh?
You are listening to the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. Please share us with your friends.